Yes, well, we're glad to see everybody this evening. And today is session 3. Is your kitchen bugged? And we're going to be giving some very unusual information this evening that's intriguing in kind of a scary way, if you ask me. The lowdown on bugs, which is not always fun. And no one's completely new here. Alan has been a mashgiach for 12 years. He's certified with the Rabbinic Council, the Orthodox Rabbinic Council of Florida. He has written 3 books, and he's published a number of articles in a variety of magazines. He's also written comic parodies, as well as a lot of children's songs. And he has 7 CDs out, one of which won the coveted Parents' Choice Award. So he's very accomplished in different ways. And he loves to do research about kashrut. So without further ado, I bring you Alan, and is your kitchen bugged?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. Anyway, so as is the custom here, I'm going to start out with the limerick, which covers basically the topic we're talking about. So anyway, check your produce for bugs that are crawling, like aphids and thrips most appalling. Look for legs and for wings. Most disgusting things in your lettuce, they may come a-calling. So if that doesn't scare you right away, I don't know what will, but that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But as I like to do, I want to give my usual disclaimer. Remember, I am a mashgiach. I am not a rabbi. I practice all the laws of kashrut, sometimes on a daily basis, depends where I'm working. But I am not trained like a rabbi's trained. I didn't have to take a test like they take a test. So they are the authority. So remember, the purpose here is to teach and inform. As far as any resolutions or decisions that you make before you go ahead and do anything, go check with your local rabbi. So anyway, to start out, the prohibition, why we check for bugs, and by the way, that's what a mashgiach, I work at a supermarket, so I'm not involved in checking of bugs, but mashgichim who work for restaurants, who work for caterers, who work for facilities that have kosher kitchens, they spend most of their time, their working time, doing just this, checking for bugs to make sure that the people that they are serving or catering to are not going to commit a transgression, which is what it is by eating bugs. So this is why it's so important to even further stress that. How many times would you say in the Torah it tells us not to eat non-kosher animals? Anybody have a wild guess? How about once? Tells us one time what animals not to eat. Bugs, 5 times. It's mentioned 5 times in the written Torah that bugs should not be consumed. So that gives you an idea of how important that is to not do that. So to get into details, first of all, let me show you a visual of what I'm talking about. Some of you may not be familiar with the types of bugs, but here's a little something for you to look at. These are the common. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. these are the common types of bugs that are found in produce. You got the walnut aphid. I don't know why it's an aphid, but I guess its first name is walnut. I don't know what they're talking about. I've seen those. Asparagus beetle, I've never seen. Thrips, I've seen plenty of thrips. A seed corn maggot, haven't seen that. Vegetable leaf miner, I've seen those. Cabbage maggots, haven't seen those. The mites, I've seen some mighty mites. And the leaf miner trail, these are things that you sometimes find on celery, which means that the leaf miner, which is what you see over here. Can you see where I'm pointing with my pointer? Is that
Yes.
showing up?
Yes.
Okay, so those are the trails that it leads. So if you find something like that on your celery, you can still wash it away, but you really don't want that. So everybody get a good look at this. Okay, so I can bring that up again if anybody's interested in taking a look at what they look like. So if you ask people, just people like ourselves, you and me, about eating bugs, I mean, we're not going to conscientiously go around looking for bugs to eat. But the thing is this, if somebody said you ate a bug, you could be walking through a forest, you could be walking, just sitting outside, and you can breathe in the air, and you may be ingesting bugs. And bugs, generally the type of bugs we're talking about, do not carry diseases. And so basically it's something that may not be construed as being harmful to your health. I've actually, I'm sure some of you have seen some of the posts I put up where I talk about different types of bugs, and people write back sarcastically, hey, it's only protein. So anyway, so, you can poo-poo the idea of eating bugs, but you cannot poo-poo the idea of violating a Torah command. So this is really what makes it so important. So to get down to the real essence of tonight's class, we're going to talk about how do you check for bugs. And I'm pretty sure that we're going to carry this on next week as well, because I like to cover most of the things, the produce that we would be eating, so you'll understand. So first thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you on a professional, and by I mean professional level, I'm talking about someone who does this for a profession, being a mashgiach, how mashgiachim check for bugs. And I'm not necessarily recommending that you do it this way, but you can. There are ways you can do it in your own home. There's two basic types of ways we are instructed to do. One of them is called the mesh cloth method. A mesh cloth is like a cheesecloth, where it's a type of a cloth where you can pour water directly through it. It doesn't accumulate the water. It's, I guess the word is absorbent enough where, and it doesn't absorb water and it reaches this level. You just can keep on pouring water through. That's the mesh cloth method. And then there's the alternative method. So let's talk about the mesh cloth, how it works. Any way you check for bugs, be it professional or if you do it at your home, it starts out with one basic concept. That concept is you need to fill a vessel with water. It shouldn't be hot. It shouldn't be too cold. It should just be probably room temperature water. You fill a vessel with water, and once it's full, you add either what's called vegetable wash, or you can use dish detergent or soap, something that doesn't have a scent to it. And what you want to do is you want to be able, with the vegetable wash, it doesn't make it doesn't make suds like like the soapy, the dishwashing detergent will. But with the dishwashing detergent, you just want to see some bubbles there. Not a lot, just a few. So what you do is you take, let's first talk about lettuce, because that's the easiest and it's probably the most common type of vegetable that people will wash. So what you do is, let's use romaine. Romaine lettuce, which is very popular. What you do is you take the stem off, you break it away so all of the leaves can be separated from the base of the lettuce itself. So what you do, you immerse it in this solution that you have, and you let it sit there for 2-3 minutes. And after 2-3 minutes, what you do is you go in and you swish it around with your hands and wash it off, you know, swish it. Elena, could you mute everybody?
Oh, excuse.
Okay, we got that. Okay, so what you do with that is that you put it in the soapy solution, and then you take it out of the soapy solution and you rinse it under water. You rinse it under the tap. And once you rinse it under the tap, you put it back into the vessel that you used at the beginning, but this time there's only water in it, okay? So does everybody follow? You take a vessel, you put a solution of soapy, minimally soapy water or vegetable wash, you smush it around a little bit, take it out, clean it off, get all the residue off under the faucet, and then you put it back in a container of water. Then and that's how we start, whatever type way you wash, that's how we start. So here's where the mesh cloth comes in. What you do then is you take the vessel, you've already removed all the lettuce. So if there were any bugs on the lettuce, once you've washed it out thoroughly and put it into the water, the bugs will generally come off. So you take that, let's say that this bowl of water, and you've got somewhere else in other part of the sink, you have a strainer with the mesh cloth in it. So what you do is you pick up the water, you pour it into the strainer, and all the water will go through. And if there were any bugs, you will find them on the mesh cloth. Everybody follow? You'll be able to see them very, very clearly. And I failed to mention this, for bugs need to be visible to the human eye. We can't deal with microscopic bugs, even though I've seen some meshkichim use like the jeweler's loop to look for everything. We're not talking about microscopic bugs. We're talking about bugs that are visible to the human eye. So if there are any of those bugs, they will be on that cloth. They will be on that cloth. So that's one way. The other way is you start off the same way with the soapy solution washed off and then put into the pure water. You have what's called a light box. We have a light box. It's a rectangular shaped thing, maybe, I would say no more than a foot wide and about 6-8 inches deep. And then you take, when you're dealing with lettuce, every leaf by itself, and you put it on top of that light box. The light shining through it will definitely show up the bugs. If there haven't been any bugs that have entered, you will be able to see those bugs there. But not everybody is going to go out and buy a light box. So what I suggest is this. When you're washing your vegetables, let's say this is before Shabbat, do it when there's still some light out. Or if there's not light out, you have a good overhead light or some type of a lamp close by, where after you go through the procedure of rinsing, washing and rinsing, you hold each leaf of lettuce up to the light. And you see right there if there are any bugs in the leaf itself. And leafy lettuce like romaine. Have any of you used red leaf lettuce? It's pretty much looks a lot like romaine. Then you've got kale, which is basically a lettuce type thing, but that kale's got all kinds of nooks and crannies. So that's where you got to be real careful, because that's where the bugs hide. The bug's motto is, come and get me, because I'm not going to show myself to you. You got to go out and look for it. So that's pretty much the way that we, the methods that we use, the mesh cloth or the alternate method, which is I described earlier. But in your own home, the best way to do it, and some of you just like the way my wife does it. My wife is very strict with the way she checks the lettuce, and she checks every single leaf one by one to make sure there's no bugs in there. Because how do I know? I'll be sitting in my room where I am right now, and she'll be in the kitchen checking for bugs. And how do I know if she's found the bug? I hear from the kitchen, "Fah!" and I know, and I know she found the bug. I know that's her. Did she find the bug? Or you can go yuck or whatever. But anyway, that's the way she does it. Let's talk about herbs. Herbs are another thing we use widely. You know, we have a basil plant growing, and we have a basil plant in our house, which we still check, even though it hasn't been outside the house, so it hasn't been exposed to bugs, but we still check. But herbs are checked. They're very, very, very simple check herbs. Is that you basically do the same thing as I said, which is standard for everything. You put it in the soapy solution, then you rinse it off, and then you put it into the solution of plain water, and then that water you check with whatever facility that you have in your house. And if there are any bugs, the bugs will show up. Herbs can be very difficult because depending on the time of the season. We lived in Chicago for many years, and the CRC, which is the local KASHRUT agency in Chicago, came out one year and said, do not use cilantro. It's infested. Because what happened was it was a very rainy period for a couple of weeks, and dampness draws bugs. So the stuff that was going in the stores, people were complaining, and like the race here says, do not use it. I had an experience down here in Florida, which I want to point out to let you know how sometimes herbs can become infested. I was working at the time for a caterer, and one of the, he catered for a school at the children's lunch, and he was making falafel, and the guy was pretty good, pretty creative. He used to use cilantro in his falafel. They were really good. So I got there that day, and so he was making the falafel, and he says, okay, I need you to wash this. And he gave me a stalk of cilantro. So I took the whole stalk, put it into the soapy water, rinsed it out, then ran it, each particular item underneath the faucet, and put it back into the water, and I took it out. I can't estimate how many bugs I saw in the water. Some of them were floating, but some of them were still swimming around. So I separated the stalk of the cilantro, because I put the whole thing in there, and I separated it into 3 separate stalks so I could more easily get rid of the bugs. Anyway, went through the motions, put each stalk into the water, bugs. Each one had bugs. So then I separated it even further into like 6. Each one had maybe like 3 sprigs of the cilantro. Still had bugs. The rule is that if you go through the motions 3 times and you still got bugs, throw it out. It's infested. But in this case, the caterer said, listen, I got to make falafel for the kids. I told him I was going to throw it out. He says, please don't do that. the store is too far away. I can't spend the time to run and get it. So what I did was I took each individual sprig one by one. And it took a long time, but eventually you got rid of the bugs. The problem is after dipping this in water and after dipping it in a soapy solution, which was plenty times, it becomes a little bit limp and you may not, really want to use it. But anyway, that's the reality of it. So with herbs, you've got to be very, very careful and check very, very good with them because they and because the herbs are so they're not like this wide area like the lettuces. The bugs are harder to find. So keep that in mind when doing that. Another thing, although it's not produce, beans and grains need to be checked. And it's very easy. For example, let's take rice. So my wife was laughing because I heard a real loud fat one time. She had,
Oh, it was the worst thing I've ever seen in the rice. The worst.
Yeah. So sometimes when if you just don't, let's say you don't check and you put the rice into the water, the bugs are going to float to the top. But you don't want to get to that point. So what you do is when you're using the rice, if you're using a cup or 2 cups of rice, just take out the rice, take out the cups, take out the 2 cups, and just put it on a surface, or better yet, get like a piece of butcher paper, white paper, and put the rice on there and just move it around with your hands. And it will be very easy to see if there are any bugs walking around, crawling around, or swimming around, or whatever. Same thing with beans. Same thing with flour. Depending on where you live, we live in Florida, so we got to be careful. We keep our rice, we keep our flour in the freezer, in the refrigerator. Bugs don't like the cold so much. That's why they moved from Chicago down to Florida like we did, So, but you can check that very easily. Put it on a flat surface, a light flat surface, because this way you can see them if they come a calling, as I said previously in my limerick. So I skipped over this, but I'm getting to strawberries now, and I'll tell you, strawberries are prone to having bugs. The first thing you need to do, strawberry, is you cut off the top. That's where they like to hang. Cut off the green on the top. I was at another synagogue once, and I was there for an event, and I happened to, when the Kiddush started, I was a guest there, and so I went with the person who took us, and I ended up sitting right next to the Rebbitzin. Anyway, the Kiddush lunch was delicious. And after the Kiddush lunch, they brought out plates of fruit. Well, on these plates of fruit, they had strawberries, and the strawberries were intact with their green tops. So in my very subtle, refined way, I said to the Rebbitzin, "Who catered your Kiddush? Food was delicious." And she said, "What?" No, before I told her the food was delicious, she said, "Why? Why do you want to know who the caterer was?" I said, "Well, the food was delicious." I said, "But I need to call up the mishkiach and inform them that they need to cut the tops off the strawberries." Many times, people who take upon the job of being a mishkiach don't understand that what you are is not just somebody who checks for bugs, but you're a kosher police. You got to make sure everything is done right. And sometimes they take shortcuts. And I wasn't going to tell the caterer, but I was going to ask the mishkiach and explain to them, if they didn't know, and chances are they may have been texting on their cell phone when that part of the class was being discussed in the mishkiach class. Anyway, so she informed me that who the caterer was, and she says, but as far as the fruit goes, we did that here. I go, who did? She says, we did it in our kitchen. And she said, we don't hold by removing the tops of the strawberries. And I said, well, I work for ORB and that's the proper way to do it. Anyway, needless to say, I did not come back there again. I was not invited back again. But the point of the matter is this. People do things because that's how they were taught. There's a story that this young couple had they just recently gotten married, and the woman was making her first Shabbat dinner. So the husband is there watching her cook, and she takes out a nice roast that she bought, and she cuts about 2-3 inches off the end, sets it to the side, and then puts the rest of it into the roasting pan with the vegetables, the onions, and everything like that, and then puts it to cook. So he said to her, what was that all about? Why did you take the 2-3 inches off the end of the roast? She goes, I don't know. It's what my mother always used to do. And the mother was coming over for Shabbat dinner. And so he decided, I'm going to ask the mother. So the mother came over and he said, can you tell me why you used to cut off 2-3 inches of the roast? And she said, because that's what my mother did. So the husband was curious, and the grandmother was still living in where not far from where they were, and he went over there and schmoozed with her and said to her, Bobby, tell me something. Why do you, when you used to make the roast, did he cut off 2-3 inches from the end of the roast? She said in her Russian accent, saw boychik. Every Friday night, my husband, your Zadie, would bring home a roast. He went to Zalman the butcher. And Zalman the butcher only carried one type of roast, and they're all about the same size. And it was too big for our roasting pan, so I cut off 2 inches to put into the roasting pan. So the point of the matter is, people do things because of tradition. We ate at somebody's house, a very distinguished member of our community, an Orthodox rabbi, and his wife had strawberries, and the strawberries, she did not cut off the tops of the strawberries. Of course, I didn't say anything. I didn't want to put myself on another list of not being able to be invited back there again. But they do things the way their mother did, and their mother did things the way their bubby did. And these were back in the days where there was no ORB, or there was no OU or Chofk. There was no kashrut agencies to tell them how to do it. So they did it the way they did it and passed it on through the generations because of tradition. Tradition. I always like to sing a little bit. So anyway, we're going to continue this next week and cover some more different vegetables. And so we're going to open up for questions. And before we open up for questions, Elena?
Before we open up for questions, we're going to do, let's find.
Did you know? Little known facts.
Did you know? Little known facts.
Yeah, we're going to have to rehearse that one more. We just blew it. Anyway, and we're going to talk about this next week. one of the types of fruits, you notice they only, mentioned one strawberry and, two different, vegetables. Many places are of the opinion that raspberries, blackberries, boysenberries cannot be checked because of the nature of them. Everything is like they're little seeds on the top. They're all together and it's just can't really get in there and check for bugs. So they don't recommend that people use these things. Now, remember what I said, that the bug has to be visible to the naked eye. But here's the interesting thing. You can puree them, and it's perfectly okay, because once you puree them, the bugs will not be visible to the naked eye. So therefore, pureed raspberries are acceptable. I was working at a restaurant one time, and when I came in, I always used to check the freezer to see what had been delivered, check the refrigerator, and I see a case of raspberries. And I went out to the chef and I said, what are you planning on doing with those raspberries? He goes, I'm making a special raspberry tort. I go, not with the whole raspberries, you're not. He goes, what do you mean? And I told him. And so he pureed them and used them like that. So that's the little known fact of did you know? So anyway, let's open up for questions right now. Anybody have any questions or concerns? All you got to do is, Elena, can you unmute everybody, or they just ask to be unmuted?
Let me unmute.
Okay, why can't you, here, good question here. Why can't you wash lettuce and other leafy greens on Shabbos? Very, very good question. You washed before, because if you're going to wash, first of all, you can't wash like that using soapy solution, but if you would do it like that, it's separation. And separation is something, is an activity on Shabbat that cannot be done, That's why we don't wash on Shabbat. We always wash before. Who's got a question there?
I think you covered it all.
Oh, no, I did not. Phyllis.
Oh, just for the three things you talked about. Unless there's something else.
Yeah, but that's
would
only
use-
if you're on a diet of lettuce, herbs, and strawberries. And I don't know any doctor who would recommend that diet. So come back next week. We're going to be.
I'll be
talking
back
about
next week to find out.
All right. Fred, I think Karina had a question, but I think Fred, you.
Oh, okay. Just a quick one. Could you tell us a little bit about the 4 species of locusts that are allowable to eat?
Chocolate covered, vanilla covered, hazelnut, and praline. No, I can't. Well,
Green, look, the red.
yes, you can. You actually can eat. There are certain locusts you can eat. I think they have to have 4 legs instead of 8. I'll check further on that, Fred. That was a very good question. However, I don't believe that these would go over too well in the kosher market, unless, like I say, they were chocolate covered and any other covering. I mean, or like it's like breaded locusts. I mean, you could take your shoelaces and put them in a real good breading, and they would be delicious. I'm sure the locusts would be too. Karina, who patiently has been waiting here. Karina, what do you want to know?
No, thank you for the very informative lesson. I was just wondering if the Torah says anything about like why it's bad to eat bugs. I know that like there's value to what the Torah says, no matter like whether or not we understand it. But yeah, I was just curious, is there like a reason why we can't eat them? Or shouldn't?
The reason we can't eat them is because they say so. It's like the Torah has got, there's 3 types of mitzvahs. one of the mitzvahs are the eidos, which are the testimonies, which tells us about the holidays and this and that. Then you've got mishpatim, which are things that they say we can learn from watching animals, like you learn to be humble, or not humble, but sneas. How do you?
Modest.
Modest. Be modest by watching a cat, things like that. But then the chukim, there's no reason for it.
Mhm.
People have tried to find reason for it. For example, people will say, well, the reason we don't eat pork is because, from trichinosis and that. 3,300 years ago, they didn't know from trichinosis. So it's God's word. You may want to postulate what the reason is, but the reason is because God said so.
Mhm, okay.
And you also had a question of, so the best way to clean broccoli. All right, I'll cover that very briefly. This is how we do it in a restaurant or a catering thing. You first take the broccoli, and broccoli is tough to check sometimes because of the nature of it, because the top of it is very, very bunched together. So first thing you do is you take a look underneath the broccoli. If everything looks okay, then you break it off into stalks. And because the stalks are too tight to really separate and look for bugs, what you do is you parboil it, maybe 30, 45 seconds, is dip it into boiling water. And then once you dip it into boiling water, then you take it out and you put it in ice water. Why do you put it in ice water? The main reason is when you parboil it, it's going to lose some of its zing as far as the color. When you put it in the hot ice cold water, it gets greener than was when you started. And that's why the restaurants do it like that. But it also too, by putting it in the hot water, we're able to move the tops of the broccoli apart and inspect it. Cauliflower is the same thing. Anybody else?
What would you do?
I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Phyllis?
What would you do about Brussels sprouts?
Brussels sprouts are, most places will tell you, can't be checked. Can't be checked. The information, like I'm saying, like that I'm giving you, you check with your rabbi, but the basic, what I've learned myself, I mean, I've done my research for the other kashrut agencies, but I follow along with what the organization that I work for does. That's not to say other places, well, actually, by the way, I want to hold this up to you. Can you see this book I'm holding up?
Yes.
This book is put out by the OK, the K with the big circle around, with the big O around it. All you got to do is, I'm looking at the address here, info@ok.org, info@ok.org. You can get these, they'll send them to you. And it's very informative. It'll give you a different way, and you can go online and you can check, I think the first week I went over all the major kashrut agencies. You can check those out. And, next week, I'm going to have a flow chart that takes the 5 major kashrut agencies and where they hold on washing certain things and doing certain things. But you look on their websites, it's a plethora of information. I always try to use that word once every 3 classes, plethora. I like that. And what's the opposite of plethora? Fred, do you know?
Dearth or scarcity?
Paucity. Plethora and paucity. Okay, that's a good word. Anyway, that was our English lesson for today. A little extra bonus.
I have a question.
Yes. And what is
Could
your
you explain about asparagus?
Yes, I can't explain about asparagus, although I'll go ahead and read your date.
Or not eating them, not eating asparagus or how it would have to be.
Okay, asparagus is known for attracting bugs. As a matter of fact, I'll go over this next week. I glossed over this. The Jewish law says we cannot eat one bug, not one. The FDA has different parameters here. The FDA allows bugs, rodent hairs, et cetera, in food. They let it pass. As far as asparagus goes, they say if there's like a frozen asparagus or any asparagus, and it comes in a jar or in a can, what they'll do, they'll send their inspectors out there and they'll inspect, they'll take as a sample 10% of the amount of asparagus that's going to be packaged. And if there are less than 6 bugs that they find, it's okay. It's okay. They'll allow up to 6 bugs in the asparagus. They take a 10% sample. The tops of asparagus universally need to be cut off because that's where one place where the bugs like to hang out. That's the top of the asparagus. The other place they like to hang out is the stalk. In the stalk, you've got these triangular, I don't know what you call them, but along the stalk, you got these triangles, and that's where the bugs hide underneath. So you really got to remove all of those triangles. So by the time you get that, there's not a lot of food left to eat. So that's why we don't mess with asparagus, especially in Mashgiach. If they go working for a caterer or a restaurant that wants to serve asparagus, that's going to probably, cleaning the asparagus, probably going to occupy their entire day. So that's why I don't know if you've ever are going to find asparagus in a kosher restaurant. And that's, I've never have, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't have asparagus in my house either.
And boiling it and putting it in cold water, like with broccoli, it wouldn't be acceptable.
No.
Mhm.
I mean, boy, you got to get rid of the bugs. I mean, boy, you know, it's something that's out of sight, out of mind. That concept does not hold. I mean, we ate at somebody's house one time, an Orthodox rabbi. He was serving asparagus and he made them in the, what's that thing called? The sous vide, or whatever. He made it in there. He says, well, it was boiled. It was okay. And I go, okay. You know, I mean, I don't say anything when I'm eating at somebody's house, but if, you know, somebody sees me not eating it, I'm generally going to get asked a question about that. So. All right, so let's hold on to questions about different types of vegetables and like that, because next week we're going to go over many of the things that we didn't go over today. And also, too, I'll have that flow chart to show you how the different kashrut agencies respond to how they wash different foods. And also, too, we're going to go over some of the, I saved the yucky details of the FDA because we were on a roll here and people were asking good questions. So I didn't want to turn you off, but we'll cover that next week. So I'll give you a reason to come back and tell your friends to come back here. We got to break back into double digits. A lot of people, I'm making these recordings available to people who can't come to the class. I think that's the reason why some people are not coming to the class, but it's nice to see you all in person. I feel like I know you now. Anyway, thank you very much. Unless you have any further questions. Anybody?
Have a nice evening.
You
You
too.
too.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks, Al.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.